Good morning, this is Cecil in Blues. Thank you for joining me today for this Final Fantasy XIV video. Live Letter 35 aired today, April 28th, and it featured an extensive Q&A session with Yoshida about Stormblood. We were also treated to the debut of the Benchmark video and some other small tidbits. There were around 50 questions answered in today's live letter, which lasted nearly 3 hours. I'm going to pull forward the more interesting tidbits, and then I'll give you the less world-shattering questions rapid fire at the end. The VOD was not made public on Twitch, so I'm not going to use any of that footage to avoid running afoul with Square's hunter-killers, but fortunately they have provided an alternative in our main story. The Benchmark is available right now. I'll put a link in the video description alongside a link to the official translation available on the Lodestone forums. The Benchmark gives us a taste of the music in Stormblood and shows off a bunch of new job actions. Red Mage definitely steals the show, but everyone got their moment in the sun. Some abilities are much easier to predict how they work than others. For example, Dark Knights clearly have a new ability that allows them to shield a party member from at least one attack. Others are less clear on their specifics, but they all look really great, really flashy. I like the effects. This is definitely something worth watching, at the very least on their YouTube channel, but you can also use it to test your system, see how the game's going to run for you, and put your character in the place of the Warrior of Light. The next most important question was about the inventory expansion in Stormblood. Yoshida was ready to talk details about this finally, explaining that it would come in 2 phases to make sure that the first expansion didn't have unintended consequences on the performance of the game as a whole. The first expansion will happen when 4.0 launches, and it will come with 10 additional slots in each tab of your armory chest. So that means 10 new helmets, 10 new chests, etc. But your backpack will be increasing by 40 slots. This is not per tab, just a total of 40 additional slots. Additional increases will come later in the 4.x patch series if no problems arise from the first expansion. No mention was made about the inventory space on your retainers. Retainers currently have the same inventory structure as your backpack, so I'm hoping that this expanded 40 slots that goes into your player backpack also affects our retainers, but that was not confirmed. Yoshida did answer a question about if more retainers would be added beyond the existing maximum of 8 that you can hire through the MOG station. Yoshida said the data does not support that as a necessity, and that very, very few players have 8 retainers, and in fact that the vast majority of players only use the 2 free retainers that are provided with your subscription, and, I mean, obviously. Renting additional inventory space in a subscription MMO is the worst. The worst. Find me one example of another game that extorts its players like this, and I will drop this issue. But it absolutely infuriates me anytime it comes up. Let's take a deep breath and get back on message. I appreciate the expansion of the inventory. It's an improvement. But it still feels pretty meager when you think about how much bloat exists in the crafting system and how important glamour is to the community. Maybe this second stage of the inventory expansion, which Yoshida did not detail, will feel more freeing. Maybe it'll open up more of our inventory space in a way that just feels more relaxing. And then that will bide us time while we wait for a proper wardrobe system to be built into the game. With those headliners out of the way, let's look at the rest of the live letter. There was a brief introduction for several of Stormblood's main NPCs, but I'm here to learn about system changes. That's what I'm interested in. I do look forward to meeting these characters in June, but until then, I don't care too much about them. While we are talking about characters, though, there was a question about Gosetsu on whether he is a human who has a unique model that appears very Rogadin in structure, or if he was a Rogadin who looked more human. Yoshida said that he is a Rogadin. He's a member of the Eastern Region tribe, which looks differently than the Eorzean tribes. Details on the moving system was discussed right at the top of the live letter, and how that's going to work. When it becomes available, players will access the signboard in front of a plot that they wish to purchase, and when they select to purchase it, they will be presented with an option to move their existing house. They will just need to select that option. And part of this system is a new storage space allowing you to store outdoor furnishings, so I think that means your existing outdoor furnishings won't be obliterated in the transition. The moving feature will transfer the personal chambers, the company chest, the company workshop, and your airship voyage status. So players will just need to prepare the fees necessary to move and not so much worry about the minor details of the current existing status of their home. It sounds like you won't have to prepare your house in any way, put it on hold, make sure that you don't have anything out. It sounds like you can move the system easily and cleanly no matter what the current status of your house is. What happens to people who are inside that house at the time of move? Who knows? Anyway, prices for new homes have not been decided. It will be based on data regarding player wealth and property ownership percentages. Sounds exciting. As for the interior, there will be new options for housing interiors that have an Eastern flair, but it will be up to the designer to choose which appearance they want to use for their homes, which seems to imply that you'll be able to apply those Eastern appearances to existing homes, at least on the interior. Additional furnishings for the Domin area will be added to Final Fantasy XIV at the same time as these new housing plots are made available for sale. New weather conditions will appear in Stormblood, and considerable artistic effort was spent focusing on the feeling of air. That was in quotes. They've added clouds, mist, and fog to the game world in a way that maybe hasn't been seen in previous game zones. The size of these new areas are similar to the size of Heavensward areas, but they may feel larger at first because, once again, we'll be traveling on foot as we explore them for the first time and collect Aether Currents. A question was asked about the island of Thavnair, and Yoshida implied that it would be a feature added in 4.05, so not even all the way to 4.1. It's something that should show up fairly soon but won't be available right away. A question was asked about Asian-themed hairstyles. The answer was 2 new hairstyles will be added when Stormblood launches, but there is no top knot currently planned. A concern was raised about getting the right gear in dungeons and raids, with more jobs being added and possibly diluting the drop rates. In the case of raids, Yoshida assured you that savage drops are divided by role, so it should not have any impact to have those new jobs there. Later in the Q&A, Yoshida also talked about a change to the leveling dungeons, or just dungeons in general in Stormblood, where defeating the final boss will award a piece of gear to every player that's present, and it will be something that they can equip, something appropriate for their class. He didn't go into a lot of detail on what drop table this would be pulling for, or how it impacted the number of items that drop throughout the rest of the dungeon. It's a very positive change, absolutely, but I'd like to learn a little bit more about the details so I can compare it to what World of Warcraft calls its personal loot system, and just line those up and see if it maybe takes advantage of some of that while still retaining also some of the value of the normal drop tables. I'm very excited for this change. One of the things that I appreciate the most about it is it will make leveling through dungeons feel more viable and valuable, because you'll be earning at least 1 upgrade every time you run a dungeon. I've run into far too many problems, or just a sensation, you go to run a dungeon when you're leveling, say, from 50 to 60, and you just don't get drops, and you don't feel like maybe you run that dungeon 5 times to gain the necessary levels to push yourself into the next dungeon, but you didn't get any drops, so the upgrades they came too slow. I don't know. Hopefully that will be something that feels more rewarding to players in Stormblood. Remember that in many cases, getting back to the idea of the diluted equipment, in many cases, the equipment for new jobs is shared with existing jobs. Only the new weapons are going to be exclusive. But that being said, there will be new job-specific artifact gear. A few examples were shown on stream: the Dark Knight, the Dragoon, the Paladin, the Bard, and the Scholar. The way these will be earned is different from how we earned them in Heavensward. If you recall, we earned them in Heavensward by collecting the top tier of the tomestones that were available right as 3.0 launched, or 4 weeks down the line. So Yoshida didn't want that to happen in Stormblood. He wants us to feel cool when we hit 70. So when you reach level 70, you're going to have the opportunity to select a set of gear for the job of your choice. It's a one-time choice. It's being done to allow level 70 players to look cool and to have a uniform starting point for their item level. So we're going to be starting with our artifact gear, and then we're going to be building from there. Normal raids open 2 weeks after the launch, and then Savage raids will open 2 weeks later after that, so a total of 4 weeks after launch. Tomestones become available at the same time that Savage raids open their doors. It's not clear to me how this affects progression for your main job, or for your off-specs for that matter. I don't know how you get additional artifact gear. Later on in the Q&A, Yoshida did imply that the winners of the gear design contest would have their designs featured as high-end Allagan Tombstone gear, so it seems unlikely that the artifact gear is going to be in the same place along the path that it was in Heavensward. So I feel like it's going to be a very low-end item, and like possibly dungeon level. I'm not clear. I'm looking forward to kind of having that information fleshed out as well. I do like the idea, definitely, of having our artifact gear right away and then, replacing it. As opposed to that kind of ugly gear we wore for the first month of Heavensward. I'm going to appreciate not seeing everyone walking around town in rags while they wait for their artifact gear to become available. Speaking of gear, Samurai and Red Mages will need level 50 plus weapons available to them. Allagan Tomestones of Esoterics, Lore, and Scripture gear will include options for the new jobs. Additionally, all previous Tomestone exchangeable gear will be available for Poetics. The way this was phrased, I wasn't entirely clear if that meant... No, I'm pretty sure what they mean is there will be Samurai and Red Mage weapons available at level 50 in those themes, and they'll all be available for purchase with Poetics. Items are being added to all primal fights, all the way from Ifrit to Zervan, and that does include special visual effect weapons. Weapons will be available from the Alexander series. Those are being prepared for launch. Samurai and Red Mages will not get weapons from the Coil of Bahamut, and they will not be able to create Zodiac or Anima weapons. Now, let's talk about crafting for just a little bit. There will be no new systems added for crafting and gathering in 4.0, but they will be adjusting the specialist system based on feedback. They didn't go into any details as to how they're going to be adjusting the specialist system, but hopefully it'll be, useful? Blue scripts are being retired, and red scripts will no longer have a weekly cap. There will be a new script, the green scripts. They're added in the Stormblood, but they will also have no weekly cap, removing entirely all weekly restrictions from crafting and gathering. The default GP, the gathering points regeneration speed, is not being increased, but you will learn a new ability through your class quest that will provide additional regeneration speed. Underwater gathering is being added in Heavensward, as they've talked about before. In the benchmark video, you can see spearfishing being shown off, as well as, clam mining. I didn't see specifically what the equivalent of botany will be. But I'm sure there'll be something down there, seaweed mining or something, I don't know. A player asked if the Collector's Edition swimming mount was the only underwater mount available. Yoshida reconfirmed that all flying mounts can swim, as well as chocobos. He also showed off a tiger mount, and he said that it could swim, and that he mentioned that more ground mounts may be given the ability to fly in the future, allowing them to also enter the water. I feel like this player was more asking if there would be specific water-themed mounts, like the Hydra in the Collector's Edition, like maybe if there'd be starfish or seahorses or whatever, and that was not addressed by Yoshi P. On the subject of mounts, 2 new ground mount speeds are being added in Stormblood. The current speed will be the slowest. Clearing the main story in each area of Stormblood will unlock a speed boost for that area, and later a 3rd tier of speed will be available from doing a certain something, but they didn't say what. Because this is related to the main story, if you're caught up through the Heavensward story, the 2nd tier of speed will be available for all 2.0 and 3.0 areas, which is great for zones that we cannot currently fly in. The way this is structured does seem to imply to me that maybe we will not be able to fly in Stormblood zones as quickly as we were able to fly in Heavensward zones. I could just be overreacting or misreading the situation. It could just be there to deal with zones that flying will be blocked in. The hub cities seem quite large in Stormblood, so maybe they wanted to just give us a little bit of extra speed boost as we wander through those areas. An additional movement change that came up during this mount discussion was that Sprint will no longer consume TP. Tanks and melee DPS will finally be able to use Sprint freely in raid encounters to avoid mechanics when they get stuck in a corner. A question was asked about the time zone difference between Eorzea and Doma. Yes, the time zone is different from a lore perspective, but the UI will not change from Eorzea time to, I don't know, Doma time, or anything like that. Think of ET, Eorzea time, as the area's local time when you teleport to that zone. Based on the way this was presented, I was a little unclear if this means that there will in fact be a time shift for when we teleport, or if this is like a, you know, if you're wondering how he eats and breathes and all that other science facts sort of situation, and we should all just, as they say in the song, learn to relax. PS4 Pro support will be added in Stormblood. Players can choose to keep existing resolution and get a consistent 60 frames per second, or they can choose to keep existing frame rates but increase the resolution. There will also be UI scaling options added for the PS4 Pro, and maybe some other graphics options as well. I play on the PC, so I don't know much about that or care much about it. If you're playing on the PlayStation Pro, let me know what options they give you. A new materia is being added in Stormblood, as you might have expected, but it is being called something slightly different. They didn't want to increase it to Materia 6 or so forth, because that could create problems in other Final Fantasies. So it's called High Materia 5, and they expect that in the future they'll go beyond that to Grand Materia 5 and Super Materia 5, I don't know. It will be restricted to 1 high materia slot per item, and he said that it would only be in advanced melding. This seems to imply that only crafted items will be able to make use of high materia, much in the same way that token items cannot currently be slotted with their main stat. But perhaps I'm misunderstanding this situation as well. I'm sure we'll get more details as we get closer to the release of Heavensward, so we don't have to worry too much about it today. Fates in 4.0 are getting new features, and these new features are designed to make it easier for players to earn experience bonuses. They were not clear on exactly what the specifics of that were going to be, but hopefully it will return Fates to being a viable alternative to Palace of the Dead for leveling, without making Fates the only alternative to leveling, leaving Palace of the Dead a a barren, empty wasteland, because I have a lot of fun with the Palace is Dead, and I would like them both to be equally as acceptable alternatives depending on what you're in the mood for. A question was asked if Samurai will have armored-style gear options. Yoshida confirmed that they have prepared some armored gear style for that job. Remember, Samurais share gear with monks, so you can probably create some armored appearances with existing monk gear. Plus, there are some samurai-themed glamour gear that has appeared throughout the years in Final Fantasy XIV from various events, so if you held on to those, you may be able to make yourself an interesting suit of armor that fits what your vision of the samurai should be. Then I've got a series of high-speed questions that most of them may be a little bit obvious, but here's one. They're adding a new aetheryte to the Ul'dah market board so that you can teleport there directly from the board, so you don't have to sprint across most of Ul'dah like you do currently. Someone asked, are there new hunts? Yes, there are new hunts. Are there new sightseeing logs? Yes, there are new sightseeing logs, a total of 45 new vistas. Will there be Japanese emotes? Yes, there will be new emotes. The macro limit has been increased to 100 per character plus an additional 100 shared account macros. Retainers will be able to level to 70, and they will also be able to learn Samurai and Red Mage jobs. There are no new ranks being added to the Chocobo Companions, but obviously as you level up, so will they, because they match your level. There are no new gold saucer features planned for the launch of Stormblood, but there may be new awards that you can buy with Manderville gold saucer points. There are no new character customization options or features in Stormblood, as in there are no new sliders, there are no new skin colors or hair colors, etc. There are, as they mentioned earlier, a couple of new hairstyles. Changes to tombstone structure, no, this is going to be the same structure that we're used to, with one on a weekly limit and one with an unlimited limit, and then the older tombstones as well. I'm pretty sure we'll have the level 50 tombstones, which will be poetics, and then we'll have the level 60 tombstones, which will probably be an uncapped version of scripture. And then we will have the new tombstones. They haven't given us the name for them. Yoshida actually said it was going to be a mystery still. Let's see, what else do we get? Heavensward dungeons will be allowed to be run in undersized party in 4.0. The phone app is still in development. They actually want to make it more feature-rich by the time they launch it. They expect that to be in early 2018. Combat actions are being added to the group pose feature, so you'll be able to individually go in and put people in different stages of their animations for their combat actions, which is awesome. I love how they've continued to work on that tool. There will be more than 20 new minions added in Stormblood, so I guess if you like playing Lord of Verminion, well, now you have 20 plus new minions to play with. There will be Aura children in the Azim Steppes. They said that they won't be maybe as fancy looking as our friend Chloe was in Idleshire, but that model exists, so, well, you just gotta put some horns on it. As a final note, Yoshida will be doing a patch notes reading for the Stormblood 4.0 patch in English when it releases. The rest of the live letter focused on special promotions in Japan celebrating the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy. It included Yoshida taking a bite of a display-only cake, which did not end well for him. And that was pretty much the entire thing. I do thank you for tuning in for this live letter recap. Make sure to download the benchmark for yourself and give it a try. There will be another live letter from Germany in May, so that will probably hopefully involve some English translation. This was picked up by the fans' translation. It wasn't part of the official translation. There was some confusion on the actual date of this, so I'm not real clear. I don't know of any big video game events that are taking place in Germany in May. Exact details will probably be posted on the Lodestone soon. One of the translations said the 8th. That seems highly unlikely. Another said the 18th. Possibly the 20th? I don't know. We will find out eventually. Keep an eye on the Lodestone. If there's other news to report, I may do a video on that ahead of time. But if it's just a simple date announcement, probably not worth making a whole video about. Until we get to that point, make sure follow the channel to be notified when new videos are posted. You can stop by my Twitter @itsboats for other nonsense. As far as the comments go ahead and let me know what you plan to do in May to prepare for Stormblood. Are you going to collect gear for one of the new jobs? Are you going to finish off a job that you've maybe been neglecting? Do crafting related stuff to get prepared? Maybe are you going to build another animal weapon? Whatever you decide to do, I hope you have fun time with it. I thank you for tuning in to this channel, and we will get more Final Fantasy XIV related content when there is concrete things to talk about. As I mentioned before, you can subscribe to the channel to be notified when new videos are posted. They should hopefully stand out from the darkest dungeon playthrough videos that I've been posting recently. That's all the nonsense I had to talk about today. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a great weekend.